Hello and welcome back to the Music Career Show. So my guest today he's a very, very new acquaintance of mine in the music teaching world, I should say even. He developed an online teaching software that claims to have killed Zoom, as well as having one of the coolest, music teaching studios in the whole entire world. And I can't wait to talk all about all of this stuff. This is Mike Grande. How are you, Mike?
I am great, Barry. Thank you so much. And you got that last name pronounced perfectly. So thank you very much. No editing required for this intro.
My pleasure. It's the Irish accent. It can be a curse
Yes.
as much as a blessing sometimes. But Mike, I know you have such an interesting and sort of different story to most of the guests that I've had on. But before we get into that, in case people haven't come across you just yet, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them who you are?
I love starting this off by saying I'm the most successful failure you are ever going to meet in music, Barry. Most successful. Yeah, as I look at you right now, I'm seeing a picture of Eddie Van Halen in the back of your studio, your man cave. That's what I wanted to be, the next Jimmy Page or Eddie Van Halen. And that was my thing. Yeah. And at 28 years old, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife at 25 years, proposed to me. And I'm like, now I got to get a real job. And that was the end of it. Yeah. So I always stayed inside that music world. Like, for example, I taught music for probably about 10 or 11, 12 years before I went into the Wall Street world. And then my students, they just didn't want to let go. So I said, listen, I'll open up a music school. And at that time, I'll finance it with my bonuses on Wall Street, as long as you teach the same way I taught. And that's kind of what started or kept my music world alive over the course of the last 30, 35 years. So as I was doing that, my students became coaches and my coaches started to build my business. Then I opened up a second school and then as a third school. So now I have 3 music schools and about 39 or 40 coaches working for me.
Wow. That's amazing. As I said, I can't wait to get dug into all of that good stuff. Mike did say before we started recording that he's going to give away a free way to make $1 million. So
$1 million, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what that translates into pounds or euros, but it's still a hell of a lot of money, lads. So
it is.
Whatever. So if anybody wants to make £1 million, make sure you stick around for that, and we'll definitely get into that. But let's rewind back way to the start, Mike. How did you get into music to begin with? Where did it all start for you?
That's it. So I'm writing a book. The book is called From Teacher to Coach and Why You'll Never Be a Teacher, or why you'll never want to be a teacher. And it talks about my introduction to music. So I loved music, and it took me 3 tries to find the right teacher, which I call coach. The first one was like, all right, I went up to this woman's house, or man's house, maybe when I was 9 years old, sat them down, or they sat me down to a Mel Bay book, and I was like, Mary Had a Little Lamb? What kid was inspired to want to learn to play rock and roll guitar by listening to Mary Had a Little Lamb? Quit that. And then a few years later, my mom tried looking for a guitar coach or teacher, and this guy, he looked like Ronald McDonald with a timer, sat down with an acoustic guitar, put it on my dresser, started to teach me chords, and said, when you get good enough, kid, you're going to be playing 11 o'clock mass on Sunday. I'm like, dude, my hair is down to my waist. I want to meet girls. I don't want to do this for 11 o'clock mass, man. So I quit again. And then I remember I was 15 years old hanging out with my buddy Adam, and he took out his guitar from under his bed, and he was terrible. He was absolutely awful. And he's like, you got to go to my teacher. He's the best in the world. I'm like, if those are the results, I don't think I should be going to your teacher. Long story short, he calls him in front of me, and I'm like, no, I just can't afford it. Forget it. Don't even do it. He goes, you know what? He charges by the hour, but maybe we could do it for a half an hour. Let me call him now. He calls him up. His name is Kenny Lee, and he lived in Brooklyn, where I lived in Brooklyn, and he confirms an appointment with me. And I'm like, I don't want to go. What am I going to do? So I said, all right, I'll just go. I probably can't afford it anyway. So I get to his house. A couple of days later in the afternoon, I'm ringing his bell. No one answers. And I'm like, oh, I just got away scot-free, man. That's it, Barry. I'm leaving. I don't have to worry about this anymore. And as I'm walking away, I hear, yo, Mike, is that you? Is that you, Mike? And I'm like, yeah, Kenny, is that you? He's like, I'll be right up. He opens up the door, and it was like one of those moments where you can see like the light behind him. He looked at the time just like Randy Rhoads. And if anybody knows who Randy Rhoads is, then you know Ozzy Osbourne and all that stuff, but Quiet Riot. And he looked like Randy Rhoads. Hair was down to his waist. He was like this tall, skinny rock star. And I remember he goes, "All right, let's come into my studio." So we walked downstairs to his studio, and it's a full a recording studio like you've never seen. And you're talking
Unreal.
about the mid 80s, early
Yeah.
80s. And I'm like, holy smokes, 25 guitars, Les Pauls, reel to reel keyboards. It was like, holy smokes. So he sat me down, and this was the turning point of my
Yeah.
career. He said, "Oh, who do you listen to?" I said, "I love Led Zeppelin." And he goes, "What's your favorite song?" I said, "I'd love to learn Dazed and Confused." So he picks up his electric guitar, and I have, of course, my electric guitar. I had a
Uh-huh.
cheap Fender I could only afford,
Yeah.
$110 Fender Roadster. He said to me, "Okay, the 12th fret, I want you to play these harmonics. Boom, boom.
Uh-huh.
And then I want you to take the nut and I want you to bend it
Do
like
the
Jimmy
thingy.
Page."
Yes.
Yes. And I did that. And that was when I was bit by the bug. From
Yeah.
that moment on, I played between 8 and 10 hours a day, every single day of my life up until
Yeah.
28, 29 years old. It took
Wow.
finding the right coach to ask the right question, which was, who do you listen to? What's your favorite song? And what do you want to learn? When
Yeah.
they asked those questions, that was the turning point. Now, I've had teachers before that that were terrible. This guy changed my life, and I thank him in my book as well. So, finding the right coach, not the right teacher, the right coach is I think the one thing that changes from somebody who becomes just a guitar player to somebody who becomes engulfed in music and
Yeah.
wants to be a guitar hero. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes all the difference having a student like you that is coachable. I'm a music,
Yes.
yeah, you know yourself. I'm a music teacher myself, and I love every one of my students, and I know them all personally, and they're all great. Some of them are more coachable than others. Some of them are here because their parents are sending them here, or not. Not
Yeah.
even at the moment. And in fairness, actually, at the moment, as we're recording in June of 2023, all of my students, thankfully, are here because they want to be. An
Mm.
awful lot over the years I've had because their parents have sent them, and they're
Yeah.
only here because that's where the car stops. Do you know what I mean? And they're like, right, I'll
Yep.
go into this lad for an hour or whatever. But it makes such a difference being that coachable student. So you started off anyway. You learned Dazed and Confused. You done harmonics in your first lesson, which is like class. And doing that little, I love the thingy. I don't even know what you'd call it, like the behind the nut
Yeah.
thingy. It's so much fun.
Yes.
Phil X does that. Phil X has taken that to an entirely different place altogether. With is like when he does his like Van Halen stuff on like an SG.
Yes.
Oh, I could literally sit here and talk about the nerdiness of that all day long, but we don't have all day long, and only me and you would be interested.
That's
so,
that's true.
so like I said at the start, you went on to have a career in finance and in Wall Street, but like when did that come in? Like, did you try and pursue a career in music first, or how did all that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I did pretty well. When I came to music, I was full. I was packed, maybe 50 students, 60 students a week. I had a waiting list. I was making really good money. I was also a session guitar player for Electric Lady Studios. A guy named Jimi Hendrix. You
Jimmy,
might know who
no
Jimmy
way.
is. Yeah. West 8th Street, Astor Place. I was there all the time. I was actually there overnight. So I would get there like 10, 11 o'clock at night, be there
Yeah,
till 4 or 5 in the morning. You know, you'd see bands like Guns N' Roses walk in, and it was just a totally different world. And they would call me in to do sessions. And I remember going in, I think Aerosmith was recording at the time, and they had me go up to the third floor of Jimi Hendrix's, Electric Ladyland Studios, which happened to be his fucking bedroom. Am I allowed to curse?
you
Am I
say
allowed to
whatever the
curse?
fuck
Oh,
you want, Mike. You
I'm
get
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry. I'm in
It's
his
all good.
fucking bedroom recording tracks in Jimi Hendrix's bedroom. It was like, holy smokes. That was one of that. I mean, talk about life changing. I was
Yeah,
killing it. I was probably at the time. You're talking about the mid '80s. I was probably making between $1,200 and $1,500 a night. I was ghosting albums. I mean, you can't tell anybody, what you've played on, but I was doing really well. I was with a great producer. I never forget getting phone calls in the middle of the night, and I was trying to go to college too at the time. So I was going to college, teaching full time in a band, doing sessions. It was no time to sleep, but boy, those were the greatest days of my life, man.
I can imagine. I can imagine. That's I've got a similar-ish experience in when I was working as a musician full time in Spain, just working in like holiday resorts. And to me,
Yeah.
that was like the greatest time in my life. It was just literally like you say, you're up until well, whatever, 8, 9 in the morning, just living like a rock star, not making anywhere near the money that you said you were making, but that's an entirely different level. Like you just had a answer the question with Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith, and Jimi Hendrix all in the one fucking like answer. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I've got a podcast recording later on. I might just get onto him and just say, no, look, we're finished, we're done, that's it. There's no point after that. So yeah, so you were working away as a session musician, being a what would you call it, a ghost guitarist? I suppose 'cause you've got ghost
Yeah,
writers for like novels and stuff.
yeah, so like there were people that would come in and they're guitar players. They might have had. I mean, by the way, if you saw me, I'll even send you some pictures. Back in the day, my hair was literally down to my waist. It was the Bon Jovi, Steve Vai days where everybody had
Yes.
really super long hair. If you look like Van Halen or David Lee Roth, you were in a band, and
Yeah.
that was what was really that was the goal, right? So it was to sell records, to be that appeal to women. So there would be really these great looking musicians up there, but they really couldn't play like a session guy. So
Mm.
you would do session work and they would get the credit. I didn't care. I mean, I was just playing on records and I'm hanging out at Electric Lady. What do I care, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what I was really doing is doing these sessions, and I was getting paid well by the record companies and the labels. So that's what I did for a while. But it turned, when I was into my late 20s, I was like 28 years old, and teaching is doing really well. But my wife, we were dating now for about a year and a half, and she just proposed to me. I tell me, she proposed, Barry, she got on one knee, she gave me a ring,
That's
she
lovely.
asked me to marry her. And it
Yeah.
was a test. It was like, listen, do you really want to do this? Are we for real? Or are you just going to do this music stuff? And if it doesn't work out, where do we go? So that was a difficult, crossroads in my life. I've done everything I wanted to do. I was really at the top of my game, but I was not or ever going to be the next Jimmy Page or Eddie Van Halen. So I decided to, let me go back to school. I had my associates at the time. I was going, just to give you an idea, growing up before I actually went to Wall Street, it was playing shows, rehearsing, doing sessions, and then I don't know if anybody ever even heard of this place called the China Club, but if you look at the China Club of the 80s and the 90s, it was like a circus of like rock stars. You would go
Yeah.
there and you would hang out. I was hanging out with like Richie Sambora, Joe Lynn Turner, the Jeff Healey band. I don't know if you remember Jeff Healey, the
I do.
blind
Yeah.
guitar
No
player.
doubt. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Jeff Healey. I would hang out at the China Club all the time. I knew the guy. It was called his name is Sal Serchia, the mayor of rock and roll. We were good friends. We always got in. It was always free as long as I drove him, and we
Yeah.
would be there. So I would come out of. So I'd go to college, come home. I would teach for 4 or 5 hours, play in rehearsal. About 11 o'clock at night, I would pick up Sal, I'd go to the China Club, spend till 6, 7 in the morning. I'd get dressed and go to college. There was no time to sleep. So
Jesus.
it was the Grammys had just done, and Jeff Healey won a Grammy, and he had some sort of music award, whatever you want. And he came to the China Club, and he's
Yeah.
hanging out, and they bring him backstage, and I'm backstage, and there's not backstage, but this little office in the China Club,
Yeah.
and they're talking about what they want to do, and they're like, let's just jam Black Magic Woman. And it was like everybody, all these famous musicians are there. His entourage is there, which is his band because he's
Yeah.
blind. Jeff Healey is blind
Yeah.
and he's been brought around. So they bring him to the stage, and I knew what song they're going to play. I'm right up front, and it was Barry, the most incredible experience. This guy gets a Les Paul. They just hand him. He
Yeah.
puts it on his lap. He plugs in. He's got trumpet players. He's got the guys from Billy Joel's band. He's there. They're playing in the trumpet sections, brass sections. They're playing, and
Yeah.
he's playing Black Magic Woman, and nobody knows where he's going, but he just points to what instrument that's on the stage that he heard that he hears to solo. So he's pointing as he's playing of all these different players to play, and they're all watching him. Richie Sambora is up there playing with
Ah.
fucking Jeff Healey, and they're watching the points go. It was the most incredible experience, and I was doing this like every night of the week. It was euphoria, right?
Yeah.
So that was what it was like in the late 80s. It's just hanging out at the China Club. I mean, all that stuff has changed, but there was waiting line. I mean, people would wait on lines for hours and not even get to the China Club. People would
Yeah.
think I was a rock star. I would come in with this guy Sal. They would open up the red velvet gates, the thing. We would walk downstairs into the China Club. I mean, it was an amazing experience. You knew the records and the albums that were coming out before they even came out because you're hanging
Yeah.
out with the producers. It was awesome, just
Jesus.
awesome, Barry.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't even know how to even start processing that. That's amazing.
So yeah, so at that time, my wife proposed to me. I was 28. I'm like, all right, I got to go back to school. So I went back to school, and I still kept my teaching. Sort of, I taught in a studio, but I kind of like rented a space, and I brought it back to my apartment. I taught part time, and I just became a social studies teacher. I love teaching. I love kids, and became a social studies teacher that lasted probably about one semester, because when you're a
Right.
music teacher or a coach. It's like if somebody doesn't practice, I tell the parents, listen, don't waste your money, don't waste my time. If the kid's not going to practice, don't bother. But if
Mm.
you're in a public school, you don't have that luxury of telling people, don't come back, you know? So I
Yeah.
got real frustrated. So if somebody was failing, I was going to fail them. But, as you're a brand new teacher, if you fail somebody and they want to make you or make your life miserable and you're not tenured, which basically means you don't have a job, you don't have
I
stability
know
in
what
your
you mean.
job,
Yeah.
yeah, for 2 years, you can be put in the worst schools in Brooklyn or the Bronx. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So
Yeah.
I was an integrity thing. So I failed somebody and they behind my back passed them. And I looked at that and I said, I don't want anything to do with this business.
Yeah.
I quit. And I said to myself, I'll give myself the next 2 months. It was June. School was out. I said, if I don't find a job by September, I'll go back to school. And this is after putting in 5 hours in total of college because you had to become a education minor while being a major in social studies. You had to put in, I think I had to get like 140 credits as opposed to the
Yeah.
120. Long story short it was the last week. It was Labor Day weekend, and I got a
Right.
call to work in IT. So I go to IT. It was on Wall Street, American Express. It was the Twin Towers. I worked at the Twin Towers,
Wow.
and it was an office move, and I had to move computers and they liked me and they said, all right, so we're going to go back and this is only a 2 week gig. And I'm thinking, all right, I got to go back to teaching. So it was the last couple of days before I was going back to go to school to teach, and I'm under the desk fixing a computer, and so a woman goes, Mike, is that you? And I'm like, who's that? I looked at this woman. Her name was Joyce. It was the mother of a student that I was teaching for years who loved me
Class.
and loved what I've done for her son. She's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing here? I'm like, this is like my last day or two. I got to go back to teaching. I hate it. She's like, you want a job? And that's what started my career in IT. It was because of my music and my music teaching and coaching and the,
Yeah.
the, the relationship I had with her son. And I was his mentor, who, by the way, I still talk to. He's an attorney, a big famous tax attorney in New York City, probably one of the biggest in the world. He's now one of my tax advisors. And that relationship after 35 years is still going. So you never know who you meet at the beginning because you're
Yeah.
probably going to meet them in the middle and then at the end. So always be
Yeah.
great to people.
That's an absolutely amazing story. That's
Yeah.
honestly
Thank you.
that's like I said, I don't really know what to do with any of this information. This is all just like amazing stuff. This is class. Half
Thank
half
you.
of my editing for this podcast is going to be me cutting out me saying the word amazing. But anyway, so what was it then that you did on Wall Street? What was that job that you took?
So I loved computers simply because I loved, it was the time, Cakewalk. Cakewalk was a computer program.
Sonar,
It's no
wasn't it?
longer, yeah, Sonar. That's
Yeah.
exactly, now it's wow. You really know your stuff, Barry. So I loved Cakewalk. I loved being into the middle of being working on a computer, and then that sort of like adding the computer to music, and it was just technology just started to grow, and I loved technology. So I just threw myself in it. I remember, I got a little bit of some graduation money, and I put it towards just a regular computer class, and that was
Yeah.
that was my actually introduction to working in the computer field. I'm like, listen, I got certified in Visual Basic. So they're like, all right, you're hired. So that's what I did. And I love the computers because it was a challenge. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, how do I fix this? And the one most important thing about my career in computers was not my computer skills. It was my customer service. And it was
Right.
because I was actually building this thing with American Express and I was brand new. I didn't know much about computers. So I was learning. And there was one of the higher ups, I think Ken Cheneau at the time at American Express, which was running American Express. One of his secretaries had a problem. And I said, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to make it my business to get you that answer.
Yeah.
And then with 1 hour later, I got that person the answer and we got her problem solved. And she went to my higher up, my report, and said, this guy, Mike, how long has he been with you? And like, oh, he's a temp to hire. He was just, picked up. And they're
Yeah.
like, those are the kind of people we need working for a company called Vanstar, American Express.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that was great. So it's the customer service that really got me to the level where I was at. So one thing led to the other. So as you learn, and it's part of my book too that I was saying that I'm writing is
Yeah.
if you want to continually improve yourself, you're going to grow. Like Jim Rohn always says that when you stop reading, you stop growing. And I was constantly taking tests to be certified in Microsoft, Windows and
Mhm.
Microsoft SQL Server and Microsoft Exchange Server. And little by little, I was getting better and better at it and growing.
Yeah.
So I went from level 1 and 2 to level 3, 4, and 5. And after 1 year, I was a senior tech, not because I was smarter than anybody else, because I was just so flippin' driven. And I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
taking notes. I sat around my little pen and paper, and if it was a way to fix a computer, I would write it down, because if I was alone and I needed to fix it, I would just look at my notes. And
Mm.
somebody, I remember her name was Valerie. She was my direct report. And she looked at this and she goes, "What are you doing carrying around a pen and paper?" I said, "This is my notes to fix all the computers." And
Yeah.
I was the one that wrote the training guide for all American Express technicians for the first year of my being in. It was amazing.
And that's,
And
yeah.
then I wanted a raise, and they said, "Well, you know what? Let me get back to you." And I said, "That's fine. I'll get back to you, but this is what I want to make." So after a week, she didn't get back to me. And this is an important part of the story, because John
Yeah.
F. Kennedy used this, and I'm a history guy. My father's a history guy, and I use this as my response. So I wait a week. She doesn't get back to me. I go to a hedge. They're called headhunters. So
Uh-huh.
they put me in touch with financial firms, and I wanted to get in the middle of the trading floors, which we'll get to in a second. So I
Yeah.
get hired to work for a company called NatSource, which was the greatest job I've ever had in
Right.
IT. And I said, "Here's my resignation to American Express." They're like, "Wait, we were going to get back to you." And I said, "I gave you 1 week, and sometimes no response is a response in itself."
Yeah.
And for the Cuban missile crisis, for anybody that knows anything about United States and Cuban history, was
Yeah.
John F. Kennedy did not say, "Let's launch a missile attack." He did nothing. He let the ships sit there. I think it was called the Bay of Pigs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That
And they
sounds
asked
right.
him, "Why didn't you make a decision?" And John F. Kennedy said, "Sometimes not making a decision is the decision that you make." And I used that, and that was the reason why I left, and that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. This particular company, NatSource, I was there for 15 years. I went from a senior systems engineer to a vice president to a managing director to a chief technology officer. And
Wow.
that's what really got me for 15 years. And you know how people save their money for the rainy day. I saved my money and I kept investing it in music studios, in my
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
platform. I just, people wanted to know what I was doing with my money. I was investing in a new music school. I went and opened up a music school, I think, when I had my first bonus, and we outgrew that in like a year. And we opened
Yeah.
up a second one. I outgrew that one in 2 years. Went to a third one. I outgrew that in 4 years. A fifth one. I outgrew 5 music schools in 5.5, 6 years. That's how quickly my music schools built, because I took my students who became my coaches. People done things my way, not
Yeah.
their way, and nobody's ever seen my way at the time. And it
Yeah.
goes back to my coach Kenny Lee, who had a reel to reel. We would do backing tracks on reel to reels, and I would be able to solo and learn how to play scales and chords to backing tracks. So that's how I
Yeah.
learned how to play, and I offered that to kids with my computer. So every room had a computer. We had
Yeah.
floppy disks. So we would give
Yeah.
kids
Wow.
floppy disks to take home. And then, of course, eventually emails and tape, cassettes came out, but we would send people home with cassette tapes, and they would play backing tracks. Kids were learning how to play guitar in like 6 weeks. They were playing like songs. They were in a band. So naturally, everybody gravitated to me. We had waiting lists. We had, it just, our school grew and grew and grew. And then I just had to expand to other locations like New Jersey and then Florida. So that was how it was. So my Wall Street, it was like, and the greatest part about Wall Street is you hang around people who are not only multimillionaires and billionaires. And
Yeah.
my personality, I'm very outgoing, and I don't
Mm.
there's no competition when you're in IT, because the people on Wall Street, they are, I mean, they'll bite your head off if they're competitors. But I wasn't a competitor because I'm just IT. So if you were on the
Yeah.
trading floor, and by the way, the trading floor is the craziest things you've ever seen in your life happen on a trading floor. Wolf of Wall Street, that movie was what I lived
Yeah.
growing up in the late 80s, and I should say the early 90s. That's exactly the way it was.
Uh,
And whether it's the drugs and it was effing crazy. And
right.
yeah, you take that, but I was gravitating towards the hedge fund managers, the presidents, the vice presidents, who were the multimillionaires making deals, the billionaires that would take their private jets and meet clients, understanding the value of customer service. So I took all of that and my computer skills, and I integrate that in a music school with excellent customer service, and providing IMAX with GarageBand in every single teaching room to provide backing tracks to kids. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a no brainer to come to our school. That's the way the whole thing developed.
That's literally, you ran through so many of the things that I wanted to ask you about. Like, literally, is Wall Street like the Wolf of Wall Street? Is it like that film with Charlie Sheen, Wall Street, and Gordon Gekko and all that?
Oh,
That
yes.
I'm so glad that that is actually the way. Like, as much as it's portrayed in like a very kind of, it looks like savage crack, but it's like, it's very, you shouldn't be doing it sort of thing. But it still looks like so much fun. Like, and I'm so happy that that actually did exist in the world,
Yeah, I
for
could
better
tell you.
or
I mean,
worse.
I could tell you. I could probably write a movie similar to The Wolf of Wall Street. There was one guy. I remember this guy Ralph. He needed to buy a Lexus, but he didn't have the
Uh-huh.
money. He needed $5,000. So some guy in front of me said, "I'll give you $5,000 if you shave your head, you shave your mustache, and your eyebrows and your eyelids. I'll give you $5,000." And wouldn't you know it, they hire a barber to come up to our trading floor on the 30th floor, 140 Wall Street. They have him, which was across the street from the Twin Towers, by the way. We were there
Yeah.
when that happened, 9/11. The guy goes up to they hire a barber to come up while he's actually cutting people's hair. They gave him like $500 just to come up for a 15-minute haircut in the middle of a trading floor at 5 o'clock. They shaved this guy Ralph's head, his eyebrows, his eyelids, his mustache, everything. He's completely blank. When I
Yeah.
say blank, if you close his eyes, he is blank. He goes home because he's still living with his mom. His mother kicks him out of the house. And he's like, I have no place to live. My mom just kicked me out of the house. She cannot believe this is what I did. He goes to the Lexus dealership with
Uh-huh.
with one of those. He put a hat on or whatever it was, a do rag on, because he
Yeah.
was so embarrassed. He had to cover his eyebrows. He gets his Lexus and sleeps in his car until his hair grows in.
There you can sleep.
He's got
Like,
a
it's not
Lexus.
cool.
Yeah, it's
It's
just
it's comfortable enough.
crazy.
That's I like,
This is what happened on Wall Street. Yeah.
yeah. For, as I say, for better or worse, like, that's great. That's a great
Yeah.
story.
It's a true story, and there's a lot like them.
That's absolutely. Yeah, as I say, I don't even know what to do with that information, but I'm so glad that I now know it. So
So much for a music podcast.
I know, it's class, it's absolutely class. But look, let's bring it back to the music a little bit. So
Yes.
I know that so you're working away on Wall Street. What was the catalyst then for you finishing up on Wall Street and then going back full time into like your music schools and music in general?
Oh, man, you ask great questions. I wish everybody would ask these questions, Barry. This is probably why you're probably as popular as you are. So the
Oh, I'm
reason
just curious.
is yeah, no, that's a great question. So the universe has a funny way of putting things on your lap. I always say that life happens, for you and not to you.
Yeah,
And I always felt that it's really there's a time that I need to do a transition from Wall Street over to music lessons. And I
yeah.
had just opened during right before COVID. I just opened my second music school. I took all of my bonus money, refinanced my house. I did everything, and
Ooh,
I put $650,000 into this music school. I had
jeez.
nothing left. I sold my cars. I did whatever I could, but this was the music school that you saw, Rock Out Loud.
Yeah.
We opened up on November the 2nd, 2019, and 5 months later we're
Oh,
now closed to COVID. Yeah,
yeah,
my landlord said, "F you, man. You signed a lease. You owe me the rent." And I was like,
yeah,
"What do I do?" I didn't want to lay off teachers, so I sold my car. And I had no more car. I refinanced and took out another home equity line on my house. I kept my employees and employed. I gave back. I said, everybody take their money back. We do not want to
yeah,
take your money, but we're going to give you and your children and anybody in the world free music lessons while I pay my coaches. I'll figure it out. Now, my music school in New York we've been in business at the time 15 years, and
yeah,
they were really loyal to us because they knew the kind of culture and community that we shared. So we
yeah,
might have had 250 students. We got down to 150. So I did two different things. So with the COVID folks, with a new music school, we gave everybody back their money and free music lessons. But the people that wanted to commit and stay with us over in New York City, I decided to pay for meals for every single one of the families that were with us, even if they canceled. So I
yeah,
wanted to do something for the community. I wanted to pay pizzerias who were making no money.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to pay them to make pizza. I wanted to make sure that delivery drivers were double tipped instead of regular tipped. I wanted to pay them
yeah,
their gas and pay them a tip. And I wanted to make sure that those families that were coming to us or not coming to us were still getting a meal, at least one meal per family. And we fed 250 families in the course course of 6 months, and that I
Yeah.
paid for everything. And that developed some kind of like culture reputation of like, these people really give a shit. It's not just
Yeah.
about a music lesson, it's about a music community, and what they're teaching and their values are teaching to our children is priceless. And that's probably why I'm still growing exponentially every
Yeah.
day. So during COVID, I'm still in IT and I'm still in Wall Street. And I was hired, and I'll never forget this. I was hired 6 years before COVID. And the person that hired me, I was the very first hire. The person that hired me was the person that worked with me at NatSource before NatSource closed. And there was about a 10-year gap, not maybe a 5-year gap,
Yeah.
between me leaving that source and me working for this guy, Alan. And he said to me, Mike, if I ever start my own company, you are my first hire. And I said, great, I'd love to work with you. And he
Yeah.
was like, everybody's got their fives. He's one of my fives. I really
Yeah.
love this guy. He's been a mentor. So long story short was this was probably 2012, 2013, around there. He's
Yeah.
decided to open up a company. And a year or so later, I'm hired now as the very first hire for this company called Owl Rock. So on Wall Street, we go in and he says, Mike, you're the first hire. We want to build this so it's indestructible. We want people to work all over the world. We're not going to be just in the city and on Wall Street. We're going to be in Hong Kong. We're going to be anywhere in Asia and Europe. We're going to be
Yeah.
in South America. You need to build this so people can work wherever they are. And that was my goal. And I did that, but it wasn't really tested until that day in March when everybody closed. And the infrastructure that I put in place worked seamlessly. We were in 5 continents. We
Uh-huh.
had 8 different places in the world that were all synced, and nobody lost a single file or email. And it was attributed to the way I built this infrastructure.
Oh.
So for 2 years, everybody was in lockdown. Nobody went to New York City. COVID was still a thing. So I worked from home and we were able to do projects, upgrade all the technology. I did that with a great team that I built. Joe Baradelli, who's one of
Yeah.
my greatest hires of all time. He was working with us, and it was just great. We were buying companies that were going out of business. We were just expanding, and now it's time to go back to work. And New York City they're very, very liberal. They're like, you have to be vaccinated.
Yeah.
And you're talking to a guy whose uncle passed away like I think it was 24 hours later after being vaccinated. He
Oh.
was found dead on his bed, literally right after getting vaccinated. And people say, oh, it was 1,000 things. They buried him real quick. There wasn't much of an autopsy. They couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that scared the shit out of me. I didn't
Of
want
course. Yeah.
anything to do with the vaccination. I'm really healthy. I exercise every day. I eat right. I don't have any issues. I don't smoke. I'm not overweight. I didn't think I needed it. They said
Mm.
to me, if you don't get vaccinated, you no longer have a job on Wall Street. And that was one of the most difficult decisions. 23 years. I was the very first hire. We at that time now were 87 billion with a B, $1 billion in
Jesus.
assets. And they're letting me go because I wasn't vaccinated. However,
Yeah.
I got them through COVID. So there is when you work on Wall Street, when people say they'll cut your throat, they'll cut your throat. I
Yeah.
hate to
Literally.
say it, but Alan, who was my senior guy there, he was one of the partners. He said, Mike, I love you, and there's just nothing I could do. It's the guy who's like the managing director, the partner, the guy who pays the bills. He's the guy making the decisions, and
Yeah.
there's nothing we can do to fight it. It's his way or no way.
Yeah.
And I respected that, and I gave him grace, and I honored him. And to this day, me and Alan are very, very close. I tell him how much this has helped me, but if it
Yeah.
wasn't for that, I don't think I would have made the cutover. And now
Right.
I'm shitting in my pants. I'm like, my company was paying my $3,000 a month medical benefits. What am I going to do? So on
Yeah.
a stressful conversation with my son, who's now 22, he teaches at my school. He's the main coach, and he's an amazing guitar player, better than his dad. On a ride home, because I picked him up, I said, Sal, what am I going to do, man? I need $3,000 a month. He said, why don't you do something on guitars, like some kind of flashcard so people can learn. I'm like, yeah, I did that 10 years ago. And this guy Scott said it would never work. He said, maybe you should give it a try again. I said, all right, I'll do that. So I went
Yeah.
to Michael's. I got it was like local Michael's is like a hobby shop. They sell cricket machines, which is die cut machine. It's a machine that die cuts. So I figured I'll take this card that goes in
Yeah.
between the strings and a fretboard, and
Yeah.
it'll sit nicely so you can play the chords while this is inside the frets and the strings, and you'd be able to hear what they sound like and then pull them out. So, needless to say, I got right to it. This was October. I was let go at the end of September. The first week of October, I went straight to it. I got it done. I had the prototype in 3 weeks. I
Yeah,
had everything up on Amazon by December 20th. It launched, and within 30 days, I became Amazon's #1 seller for guitar accessories. And last year, we finished at over $40,000 on the sale of card cords, which paid my medical benefits for the entire year. And,
that's amazing.
things like this are thrown in your lap sometimes, Barry, and you can
Yeah,
look at them as an opportunity or an obstacle. So the two
yeah,
O's, opportunity, obstacle, and it's what you choose it's going to be, not what the universe or your friends or whatever. It's what you choose to make of it. I chose it as
yeah.
an opportunity, and I went out and made these card cords. And now this year I'm going to finish well over 80,000. I think I'm doubling now what I made last year,
Wow.
and it's just like if you take that as an opportunity and not an obstacle, your life changes exponentially. So
Yeah,
that was how I went from now leaving the Wall Street world because I had no more choice. So I could
yeah,
have went on unemployment. I didn't take unemployment. I could have went and sued the company. I didn't sue the company. I
yeah,
could have went and found another job in IT. And by the way, I was a CTO, and I, believe it or not, I was a certified ethical hacker. And what does that mean? It's like a cop and a robber. A cop is licensed to carry a gun. Robbers are generally not. I was the
yeah.
good guys, and I would be able to prevent hackers from hacking, people's infrastructure. And when
Wow.
you have a certified hacker at a financial institution, the last conversation that you have with an investor is me. And this was the one thing that they had that nobody else had was a certified ethical hacker on their team as a full-time employee. I was a
Yeah,
CTO and hacker. So they would be like, okay, what are you going to do to protect my $100 million that I'm investing this month? And I
yeah,
tell them exactly what to do. And
yeah,
in fact, I go on at the time I was doing presentations for ginormous firms, and there was one in San Diego. I did. It was I taught people how to hack bank accounts. I could teach you and your audience on a totally different podcast on how you
yeah.
can hack any bank account in the world. And I flew
Wow.
out to San Diego. I did one. I opened up for the guy who invented Xbox. And actually, he was the guy who opened. I followed him. It was
Yeah,
him, Google, Amazon, Xbox, and Mike Grande. There were 5 people, and I was the last of the speakers out of 500 people in the audience, or maybe it was 1,000, over a 3-day summit in San Diego, California. And I ended with, "This is how you're going to hack a bank account." And here
yeah,
I'm going to show you in the podcast. This was the actual business cards I gave everybody in the audience. This is the cheat sheet on the what you can do to protect yourself from not being hacked. I can't believe I just found this. It was in my drawer. And that's
wow.
how you can protect yourself. And at the end of the presentation, there was a big bulletin board, and they say, okay, who was your favorite presenter? And it wasn't Xbox, it wasn't Microsoft, it was not
Yeah,
Amazon or the head of BMW, it was Mike Grande. And that was my first time I was ever presenting. So that's how I love technology. And then after that, I knew that I was able to do this. And when I left Wall Street, it was like, this is what I got to do now. I got to focus on music. As much as I love what I did,
yeah.
now I'm going to take what I've done and take what I've learned and all those lessons, like how to talk to people, how to raise money, which by the way, I never raised money for anything. I've saved everything. But if I had to raise money,
You know
I
how to
have
do
the
it.
resources. Yeah. And by the way, I'm still really close friends with all of those folks that I've worked with. Even the
Yeah,
NatSource people, the CEOs and the presidents, I'm still really close with them. Like a friend of
yeah,
mine who, he's going to be working with Ron DeSantis if he becomes president. That's the kind of level of friendships I have. Like it's
yeah,
across the board. So long story short was I was not told. I was told rather that I had to make a decision, and I chose opportunity instead of obstacle. And that was the universe, my version or interpretation of the universe saying, okay, now it's time to focus. And in that short time, I developed Rock Out Loud Live, which started in
uh
2017, but this was the reason why I did it. So Rock
yeah,
Out Loud Live is in 174 countries being used to teach music lessons. And we
yeah,
clock in at 1.1 million minutes a month on music lesson
yeah.
education. Who
I
else
saw, I
does
saw,
that?
I know, I saw that stat. So for those that maybe haven't heard of Rock Out Loud Live, this is what I was talking about at the start when I said that he claims to have killed Zoom. So maybe you want to just explain what Rock Out Loud Live is, and then those that 1.1 million minutes of lessons might then be like, oh my god. Do you know what I mean? It might resonate with people
Sure.
just how huge that is.
So people thought, and this is true, people thought that I invented COVID to launch Rock Out Loud Live in 2020. And to be fair and frank, I did not invent COVID.
No, no,
And
no. Zoom into COVID. It's fine.
yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
So what had happened was in 2017, I had a big challenge, and that challenge in the Northeast was snow. It would snow about 3 or 4 weeks every year, and which meant my music school had to close. And with
Yeah.
150 to 250 students, which meant 6 months of makeup lessons. And it was like, how
Yeah.
do I do this? And you can't grow when you have makeup lessons because if
Mm.
you're making up lessons, you don't have those slots to put in new students. So I said, what can I
Yeah.
do? Zoom is terrible for audio. So I said, what if I invent a platform? Because people are home when it snows. They're generally not out playing snow in the snow. And if they are, they could make 30 minutes on a phone call or a video call. So I said, what if I could create a platform that would give you the virtual experience of a music lesson, the audio experience of a music lesson, and
Mm.
still be able to do that during a snowstorm where I don't have to make up lessons. So that was the beginning of Rock Out Loud Live in 2017. In fact, I was on Danny Thompson's podcast, and he had told me, "Okay, so what are you doing?" I said, "I'm about to launch this podcast." This was before COVID was even a thing. I think it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in November of 2018 or 19, and
Oh yeah.
he said to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm inventing this platform. So long story short was I invented it so we can teach during these snowstorms. So it
Yeah.
was it was being built, and as you can imagine, there's a choice you have to make when you have to spend 650,000 on a music school or continue with this tremendous investment in a platform with
Mm.
no idea how it's going to end. So I said, you know what, let me just put this on pause, and I put it on pause for about a year, and I opened up RockOutLoud.com, Rock Out Loud, the music school,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is this 3,500 square foot utopia of music lessons. So when we closed, I was like, I'm like 95% done. And I think I could finish this and get this up and running. So we launched it on the 4th of July, 2020. And
Yeah.
as soon as we lost, we were just in 6 different countries immediately. But I went on a campaign. I did, let me do this. I'm going to do ikilledzoom.com. So it still exists, ikilledzoom.com. And I'm just going to do an audio comparison and then a visual comparison just to get people to see how terrible Zoom is.
Hmm.
And I launched this, and I remember just hanging out. I think I was on a beach somewhere with my family because we just had to get away, and it was the only place you can go outdoors was a beach at the time.
Yeah.
And we did this. And you got to see the record. If you go to iKilled Zoom, you're going to see the A and B of the video, the wave files. It's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
on a beach, and I get a call from one of my developers overseas, and he says to me, "Mike, you got to see what's going on with Zoom. They just launched something in the New York Times." And it said the New York Times wrote that Zoom is now going after music lessons, music educators, and they want to offer a much better experience than their existing one. Now, they didn't mention Rock Out Loud Live, and I'm sure they wouldn't. And I don't even
No.
know, I'm speculating, but to think 3 months after I launch a platform that is competing against Zoom and the
Yeah.
popularity went through the roof. And now at the time I was in 6 countries in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And Zoom knew they had to do something. And that's where the Enable Original Sound came from, by the way, because we have a
Very
thing
good.
called ear. When we launched, I wanted to make it so if a teacher wanted to play a duet with the lowest amount of latency and have full definition, full duplex music or sound
Yeah.
quality, that it wasn't as crazy as going to Enable Original Sound, tweaking the sound card, changing the mic settings. What 9-year-old kid can do that?
Exactly.
So I said, I want a Microsoft. I don't want a Microsoft solution. I want an Apple solution, which is a one-button solution. You
Yeah.
click one button, it'll take you to the server, and we pre-configure your server settings to your phone, your mobile device, your desktop, your students. We do everything in the background. All you need to do is teach. So
Yeah.
all the teacher has to do is click one tick box, and it redirects you to that. And that was really what really put Rock Out Loud Live on the map. So, we just built and built and built, and now we're at 175 different countries, and
Yeah.
it's been amazing. I've met people from all over the world, and the relationships that I have now that I've developed because of this, whether you're in Italy or Scotland and Germany, and if you're in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, it's just
Yeah.
amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the sort of, if there was any silver linings to be taken from the pandemic, is that the world is a much smaller place now. The world has been getting smaller and smaller for
Yeah,
years and years and years, as we
that's
all know. But
true.
like Like, where are you currently? You're in Tampa, are you?
No, I'm in New Jersey. Tampa is
You're
one of
in
my schools.
Well, you're in New Jersey, and I'm in Aberdeen, in Scotland. As I said, in my little shed, and here we are having a conversation. Do you know what I
It's
mean? And
amazing.
like,
Yeah.
and it never would have happened only for COVID. So as terrible and as horrendous as it was, there are, if you can process it that way, there are some silver linings, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
I did have a question about Rock Out Loud Live, RockOutLoud.live. Apologies,
Yes.
RockOutLoud.live. Was that I remember trying it myself. I had very, very poor internet. I've only literally just in the past 6 months gotten fiber, so I was still relying on like
Right.
copper broadband. And Rock Out Loud Live did not work very well for me, and I'm 99% certain it was because of that, because most online platforms didn't work for me. So teaching online was a disaster for me up until like six months ago.
So
Perfect.
just so the differences between there's a lot of differences between Zoom or any platform and Rock Out Loud Live. So Rock Out Loud Live requires 1.5 megabits of bandwidth. So if
Yeah,
you're having a struggle with your internet, where Zoom requires, I want to say maybe 50 kilobits, not even megabits, kilobits, which is even small, 50 to 100, because they
yeah,
use such a small amount of bandwidth because they focus more on the video, less on the audio, and the sound is so limited, so their
mm,
range is very, very diluted. So you might have a range that's just putting you in this small tiny box where it can't pick up the highs and it can't pick up the lows. And we the requirement of more bandwidth. So originally we were 2 megs. We were able to bring it down to 1.5 megs with the same experience. So
yeah,
if you are struggling with Wi-Fi, the Rock Out Loud Live servers on the background, and we tell this to people a lot, is we focus more on the back end, and you're not going to see a lot of emojis poking up in the front end interface. We're going to be working all on the back end, which you're not going to
yeah,
see. So long story short is we focus on the back end. So we've been able to adjust our servers. So if your bandwidth is struggling, we're going to reduce the video quality and maintain the integrity of the audio, which is so important for a music lesson. But people
yeah,
start to see pixelations or ghosts, and the mouth doesn't line up, or the fingers don't kind of cooperate in terms of the notes and what the fingers look like. It's only because we're making those adjustments in the background so the audio could remain stable.
yeah,
So a lot of people get frustrated with that because they're used to Zoom where they can see that, but they have terrible audio. So that's the trade-off. But
yeah,
we did reduce it from 2 megs to 1.5 without losing anything. So that's something to keep in mind too. So with Zoom, they offer you such a tremendous amount of I guess it's so small what they offer in terms of their pipe, and that's why
yeah.
we can benefit more with extra bandwidth now that you're able to get that extra bandwidth.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely intend on going back and revisiting it, because I remember looking at my
Great.
like my speeds, and I was like 3 megabytes of a download and like point 0.3 of a
Wow.
megabyte
That's it.
upload. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the problem. And like it wasn't like if I was in my house, it might have been like 4 or 5 down and maybe a half up. But when I was out here
Yeah.
in my little studio with like a power line adapter, do you know what I mean? I would have been doing well to like watch a video on YouTube or something like
Yeah.
that. It was just it was a right struggle, but I'm glad that it was just the internet. But like obviously your stats are fantastic. So it clearly was my internet. Like 40,000 virtual music lessons per week, averaging out at 1.1 million minutes of lessons every month is just, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Johnny Wilson can boast that he had 2,000 students a week in his studio. You got 40,000.
Well, they're not my students; they're others, and it's Johnny Wilson's totally different. He's changing 2,000 lives, with in front of these folks. I'm
He
doing it
is.
in the back end, but yeah, what Johnny Wilson offers is far superior than what just offering a platform does. Because I mean, especially his programs and what he offers as well is just
is
top notch.
Yeah, you know as well as I do that Johnny's program is literally the best in that West,
Yeah,
the best I've ever come across. It's
100%.
it's it's absolutely phenomenal. So you're like, honestly, I've sat here for the past 49 minutes listening to all these different things that you've done and all these stories that you have, and I literally just think I don't even know if there's anything left in the world for you to do. But you have got some more stuff. You've got something called Safe Sticks, which I'm ashamed to say I didn't know anything about until today. What are Safe Sticks?
Well, I'm going to show you first what safe
Yeah.
sticks are. So, everything comes out of desperation and need to improve or get something. So,
Uh-huh.
my kids had no choice but to be musicians. They suck at sports, and
Yep.
growing up,
Same here.
when they were like 5 weeks old, my drummer started playing drum. My son, youngest, started playing drums. Now he's the most incredible drummer I've ever played with at 18. My son
Yeah.
Salvatore, he's 22. He grew up sleeping in my acoustic guitar case, and he was around guitar every day of his life. So my
Yeah.
son Mateo, and he's a drummer, he was going through the Zildjian sticks literally once a month. And the Zildjian
Yeah.
sticks have this, I want to say it's
I
almost
have
like a
some behind me
rubber.
there. I know them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the rubber coating. The
Hmm.
rubber coating only goes a certain amount, but he loved the grip. The problem was
Hmm.
his rim rash. And drummers who play drums, rim rash is when the side stick hits the rim, and in the middle of the stick, it starts eating away at the stick. And the
Okay.
problem is it kind of breaks the stick real quick, and you get splinters all the time. So I developed something, and what it is it's like a piece of rubber. And here's what it looks like. It actually goes and it slips on the stick, and with a hair dryer, a heat gun, or hot water, it shrinks and it grips the stick, and it
Ah.
goes high enough to get where the rim would be getting that rim rash. So right about here, I want to say around the maybe 9 or 10 inch mark around the stick is where you would start eating into the stick and breaking it. But this
Yeah.
prevents this by this coating. And this coating is also the same type of coating you'd find on a golf club or a fishing rod. So it also prevents
Okay.
that anti slip kind of feel. So it's
Yeah.
amazing. So it does a couple of things. It gives you the anti slip feel, it protects your stick, it extends the length of your stick life, and it also prevents that rim rash from happening as quickly. So it extends the stick by maybe 3 or 4 times. So if you have
Yeah.
any stick, I think 5A, 5B, 7A, 7C, any of those 7B sticks, those sticks will last 4 times longer. So if you're paying, let's say, $20 for a set of sticks, these are like $6 on Amazon. You're now extending the life by 4 times. You're extending the life of your stick 4 times. And this way, for a lousy $6 USD, you can use the same sticks without having to worry about spending $20. So instead of paying $80 over the course of 4 months for a new set of sticks every 4 weeks, that's 80
Yeah.
bucks. But instead, you're paying $26 for the same set of sticks for 4 months. So it's just a no brainer. So that was something out of desperation. My son was like going through them. So now I went out, I got a deal with a drumstick company, and they're amazing, and they make hickory sticks. So I use hickory sticks, and my son now endorses the safe sticks. So he plays the drums with safe sticks all the time, which has been great because now I'm selling them in all my
Yeah.
music schools. I'm selling them on Amazon. People love them. I mean,
Yeah.
geez, I mean, you put them on it and it lasts forever, well, forever, 4 weeks, but for 4 months, and it just anti-slip. It makes it so much easier and more comfortable for drummers. Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
There are companies that do it, but the only companies that I've seen do it go only about maybe 6 inches. They don't go to that rim rash part.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah. Yeah.
sweet spot that you really have to capture. So they don't do that. So we go 8 inches. And by the way, the reason why I chose 8 inches, which was not for the safe sticks reason, was because when you want to become an Amazon seller, or if you want to sell anything online to the public, the key to doing that is the cheapest postage, because postage sometimes will cost you more than the product. So
Yeah.
the average envelope is 8.5 by, say, 3 or 4 inches. So I chose eight
Huh?
inches so I can slip an 8 inch an 8 inch safe stick into an envelope without having to worry to pay extra money in postage. So that's the way I'm able to get around selling it for so cheap and shipping it for so cheap, because postage is only like 65 cents as opposed to a
Right.
box that might cost $4. So
Of
that's a
course.
key.
I've often gotten stuff from Amazon like that, like this pair of drumsticks. This set of drumsticks, I remember getting it because these are the very, very first ones that I got. They were Pro Mark Fire Grain. I just thought they looked so, so cool, right? And I
Yeah.
got them in a box from Amazon rather than like one of the like kind of A4 sized things.
Yeah.
It was a big full on like deep box. And I was like, that is like the greatest waste of packaging ever. There you
Yep.
go. So, who needs tips on how to make $1 million when you're literally making millions off not paying for postage?
That's
That's
right.
crazy.
That's
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 class.
right. That's right.
And I've got a practical question about the safe sticks. So as I'm holding this, the reason I got these particular sticks, I'm not endorsing this in any way, shape, or form. This is just what the one that's in my hand, and it's forward weighted. So the tip of the stick is slightly heavier than other ones are. Now, my question is, when I slip a safe stick onto that, does it add weight and does it affect the balance of the drumstick in your hand?
It depends on how you put it. So if you put the safe stick on the very, very bottom of that stick,
Yeah,
it would probably be more balanced if you have a little bit more weight here. But if you,
of
the
course.
higher you bring your safe stick and the more comfortable your grip is. So my son likes it, so he's got at least an inch or so here. The
Yeah,
more it gets into the center, the less it will be an issue with the weight and the balance.
yeah,
But if you're going to put it to the butt, I would give it a shot. It's worth a try because it's very,
absolutely.
very
Yeah,
light. And it
yeah.
really extending the life of a stick. If that costs you $20, if it saves you the next 3 months worth of sticks, you're in good shape.
Exactly. Yeah. No. That's 100%. Can I make a request that you invent something to stop guitar strings breaking, please? Because I go through guitar strings. I once broke 7 strings in a gig on a 6 string guitar. Broke every single one of them. And
I
once you
have a
believe
fix
it,
for that. I
oh,
do
have
have
you?
a
Go on.
yeah. So my son has I bought him the 120th anniversary Les Paul. Cost me about
Ooh,
$4,000, and
yeah.
he would break 3 to 4 strings every single rehearsal, and he
Yep.
would never stay in tune. I
Mm.
got him a Tusk nut, and I
Mm-hmm.
got him the Shayla roller bridge. And for
Roller
a
bridge.
cost of an investment of $105 USD on Amazon, you
Mm-hmm.
can get these and you will never break a string. He has never broken a string since I put this on. And he's played since then. I think he's played 2 or 3 hour shows a week. And he's in the recording studio probably 4 days a week. And
Yeah.
he rehearses and plays shows probably 2 times a week as well. So he hasn't changed a set of strings in 2 months, and he hasn't broken a string once since I've installed this for him.
Fair enough. It's a
Shayla.
bit Shaler, yeah. Bit of a devil to go and spend $4,000 on a lovely Les
That's
Paul and then
exactly
having
what we
to
said. Exactly what we said.
that's that's a conversation for Mr. Agnesi. I think another day. All that stuff is great. And I wish you all the best of success with it. Not that you need it. You mentioned there at the start, and for anyone that's been sitting around for the past hour waiting for this, how
Yep.
do we make $1 million, Mike?
Okay, so let me go back to the Amazon and the kind of safe sticks things. The key to selling, in my opinion, and especially if it's on a market like Amazon. So I'm on Amazon, I'm on Walmart, I'm on eBay, I'm on Etsy, I'm on all of those platforms,
Yeah,
marketplace. The key to selling is making something small enough to ship, cheap enough to ship. That's the first and foremost. The second thing
yeah,
is when you do it, it's got to be something that's so simple where it doesn't cost you a lot of money to make, but because you're new to the business or it's new to the business, you can charge a little bit more. And I'll give you an example. So here are the card cords. My card cords are small enough to ship, and it's probably about a $3 to $4 investment to ship. Now, this is small, but for
mhm,
Amazon's world, it's considered small, considering a guitar or a guitar case or something like that, a
yeah,
guitar stand. It's very, very light as well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you just gotta make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, you can see if you can market it and find influences to help you out. So that's really important too. So like I had Marty Schwartz, and he was the guy that really started really promoting the card cords as well. So I'm going to
yeah.
show your audience an idea that I think the first time I presented this was with Mike Gumley, but this is something I've done now for, I want to say, I played this on my own albums for 13, 15, 16 years or something like that. So there
Okay.
were times I was in the studio and I needed a 12-string guitar. I needed to change the tone of an acoustic guitar, and I just didn't have that. And I said, what the hell am I going to do? And I was in the studio. I had a piece of gum, and I had a thin, and I had a thin and a medium and a thin and a heavy pick. And with that piece of gum, I tied 2 picks together, and I played an acoustic guitar. And it's on one of my songs called A Walk in November. I have an album on iTunes if you ever want to download it. It's like an instrumental Satriani type of Steve Vai album. Walk in
Cool.
November is on that, and I used this particular pick. So I have an acoustic guitar. I'll play it for you. So what I'm telling your audience, if you were to come up with 2 picks and figure it, now I've already figured it out. I put it together. I did it myself. I'm going to ask your audience to listen to the difference. So I don't want to say that this is going to simulate a 12 string, because my son made a good point. You're going to get these people on Amazon to give you terrible feedback and say, that doesn't sound like a fucking 12 string.
Uh-huh.
So we call it the tone pick. because it changes your tone so significant, it almost makes it sound like you're playing another guitar, and you're going to hear
Right.
this for yourself. So I'm going to grab my acoustic guitar, and this is a Taylor, and this is nothing other than just my USB mic that it's plugged in
Okay.
right now. So if you just let me know if you hear the guitar.
Tell you what, Mike. Tilt the microphone
Yep.
towards like the 12th fret. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay. So this is what a guitar sounds like with a regular heavy pick, and it sounds beautiful. But
Yep.
now you take a pick. Now, what I've done, you have to know the proper amount of space between the two picks. So, and you can play them two different ways. So now that's the same pick. So listen to it one more time with the regular pick. The brightness compared to a
Yeah.
regular. It's a fullness and brightness. And when you put the 12 string feel
Yeah.
compared
Lovely.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a totally different dynamic. And that's what I call it's a tone pick. So you
Yeah.
think about it. If you go and you mass produce these things, and you find out exactly how to space them, which is something I've already done. And Mike Gumley's
Yeah.
audience, I do not believe did any of this, so your audience can now take a shot at it. The key is finding the size picks that work best, the amount of space you need to simulate a 12 string. And now let's say that these picks combined cost, I don't know, 50 cents for 3 sets. If you
Yeah.
sell these for $5, for $4.99, you will be making
Uh-huh.
over a $4 profit when you take away the FBA fees and the shipping fees. Let's call it a $3.50 profit. How
Yeah.
much? I mean, you like a 30%, 50%, 100%, 300% profit can be made by selling guitar picks to guitar players that don't want to invest in changing pickups, changing instruments, buying another
Uh-huh.
instrument, changing the sets of guitar strings for $5. And you could do different versions. You can do a heavy pick and a thin pick. You could do a heavy pick and a medium pick. You could do a heavy pick and a medium pick, or a heavy pick and a thin pick, and a thin pick and a heavy pick. And you can change the direction. So once you change the direction from a thin to a heavy, now you have a
Yeah.
totally different sound because the thin pick strikes the string first and then it falls on the heavy. Then you could do the heavy pick and then it falls back on the thin string, the thin pick. So you have
Yeah.
different tonal abilities that you can combine. And just imagine offering this a tone change for $5. If you sell these on Amazon, I believe that this could be the next $1 million idea that every guitar player would want to invest in. And you know what? It doesn't mean it's just for beginners. Beginners, intermediate, people have been playing for 100 years. You can sell
Yeah.
these to music studios where they're doing sessions and they want to just change the sound of their instrument. So like people buy nice preamps for $10,000, $20,000, or I spent like $3,000 on a Neve preamp just to
Yep.
change the tone. Why wouldn't somebody change their tone for $4.99? So that's my gift to your audience. I'm working on it. I might have this by Christmas if I decide to, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to have somebody in your audience do it, because we can be competitors. I'll just win.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
There we go. That's the updated that's the updated name of the episode. I'll make you a fucking millionaire second or something like that. But yeah, no, that's so interesting when you played that there. I'm obviously listening on nice studio monitors, so anyone listening to this with headphones will probably get that even more. It reminded me of I was in the car today, and When I Come Around by Grande came on, right? And bear with me on this one. And first of all, over on the left hand side, I heard the really dark sort of crunchy guitar coming in, and then when the drums came in, the song came in full, I heard the Billy Joe's other guitars coming in on the right hand side, and it just sounded phenomenal. And that whole thing, there was a MXR brought out a pedal, the Dookie pedal or something like that, about 4 or 5 years ago, that emulated that sound, and it had two different guitar sounds, and then it had like a balance between the two of them. You've sort of created that in a pick.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly
It's like kind of I'm trying to think of it, like I don't know what I'm trying to like put a name on it or something, but like it's almost that like let's push the producer button. There you go. Do you know what I mean? And that's it. It's so well done. Like you say, a really, really simple thing. Like a really, really simple thing, but like so so useful. I'm going to try and do that.
And by
I'm
the
going to
way,
have a go.
card chords is just as simple. I mean,
Oh
I'm going to
yeah,
show you a card chord. Card chords are, by the way, the packaging we just upgraded, so you get a really hard shell case. It's a beautiful packaging, and when you open it up, you have your set of card chords, which are 15. The key,
yeah,
in my opinion, is really getting the packaging down, because people packaging sells. Listen to Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs wrote a book on, I read his biography, and he talks about how significant packaging is when it comes to
yeah,
Apple, and how much that really plays a role. But when you see a card chord, it basically slips in between the strings and the fret. So I can show you. Here is a regular guitar neck,
yeah. I,
and
I
if
I
I was
seen this
just
for the first time today, and I was blown away by it.
yeah, you put this card chord between the strings and the frets, which is what I'm doing here. If I could do this
Uh-huh.
with a microphone in front of me. So yeah, it sits right there, and there's your A chord, and then you place your fingers there. The beauty of the card chord, you can hear, you can play and strum that, and then when you get
Yeah,
real comfortable, you pull the card out, your fingers remain in place. And the key
that's
was is
genius.
it's made out of synthetic material. This way, it will never rip, tear, wrinkle, or get stained. So people can actually learn how to play the guitar, and it doesn't stick to the guitar. It won't hurt the guitar in any way. And the key here
Yeah.
is to be able to play, and you can literally learn in minutes. And when I sent this to Marty Schwartz, he was loving it, because he thinks every beginning guitar player should have a set of chord chords, and I believe the
I
same.
agree with him. I absolutely agree with him. I'd never come across it until today, and I've seen things that are not necessarily similar, but I've seen like there's like a machine that you can get on like Wish.com that will
Yep.
like you push one
Yep.
button and it plays a G chord and stuff like that, and
That guy was on
that's
Shark Tank. Yeah, it's called
no
the Chord
way.
Bunny. It's called the Chord Buddy. He was on Shark Tank. We became friends after Shark Tank because I called him up, think it was a great idea. But now there are like thousands of copycats in China all over
Yeah,
the place, making really
yeah.
terrible versions. But his was the best. His is the best
Yeah,
version.
there you go. But like, just like that, just like with your producer pick, that that is such a simple idea because I am blue in the face trying to get tiny little fingers into an A chord shape, and
Yeah,
just being like, oh yeah, just put them all here, okay, like that, and they try and spread, and you're just like, no.
right.
But like that, if you had like just a visual representation of it, which is exactly what the card chords are, genius, absolutely
Thank you.
genius. So
I appreciate that.
hats off to you. That's yeah, that's great outside the box thinking. And yeah, if that doesn't make you $1 million, I don't know what will. So everybody get out there and make your own magic pick, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Um
make your own magic pick, but make your own destiny. Don't let any other person, choose your path. You can do whatever it is you put your mind to. You just gotta fucking hustle, man. It's just if you got that hustle and you put your mind to something, don't let anything stop you, and you can get there. I mean, if there's anybody that's a perfect example of it, it's myself. I mean, I do hustle a lot, but when you
yeah,
have resources like your podcast is an amazing resource. If someone listens to this and comes up with this idea, and they can pay for their own medical benefits because they heard your podcast, Barry, you've done your job, and they've
yeah,
done it, and they've listened to it. That's all it takes, really.
yeah. Yeah, that's literally the reason I started this podcast was because I was always told as growing up that you couldn't, it would be very hard to have a career in music, and I always
Yeah.
found it really hard to have a career in anything else. And I wanted to speak to people that have done this and that are doing this and making a career out of it, because 10 years ago this sort of platform didn't exist, podcast didn't exist.
You're
Do you know what I mean?
100% right.
Online music lessons didn't exist. I spoke to a guy before that he used to he's a guitar teacher and stuff like that. He's on an online guitar personality, but he was around when like you used to get DVDs of
Yeah.
learning how to play guitar, and like you'd never think as like growing up, I was born in 1992, and growing up in the 90s, early 90s, you'd never think that you could make, if I had said to anyone 10, 15 years ago, I'm going to literally have a job where I speak to people in my shed, and that's going to be a viable career option for me one day. People would think you're mad. People would think
You're right.
you're mad. Whereas nowadays, I'm sitting in my shed talking to you in New Jersey, and I can literally have the computer write the entire script for me, and I don't even
Yeah.
need to do anything. Do you know what I mean? It's
True.
amazing. It's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Mike, I usually ask people now at this stage, what are you working on now? But God knows, like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if there's anything left to work on. Um, what's
Oh,
the
there's
next
a lot to.
steps?
So that's a great question. So last year, as a matter of fact, it was last year this month, I was in Rwanda and I actually taught 16 music teachers in Rwanda how to become music coaches. And that
Right.
was one of the most fulfilling adventures of my life. And when I came
Wow.
home, I still taught them from New Jersey to Rwanda. They
Yeah.
used it, and I brought in my curriculum to. We were presenting my music teaching curriculum and how I
Yeah.
teach and coach to the Minister of Education, which was approved, by the way. The Minister of Education for the country of Rwanda approved the Rock Out Loud a platform, not platform, the Rock Out Loud teaching instructional books and how
Yeah.
you teach and coach. And it was approved for the country. And I came
Wow.
home and I thought that what I was doing in this small little area in the Northeast, whether it's Jersey, New York, or Tampa, which is in Florida, I thought that that was something that can only be done in the United States. But leaving and going to Africa and
Uh-huh.
learning that what I can do is not cultural, it's worldwide, gave me the reason to write a book. So I'm at the last final two chapters of writing my book. It's called From Teacher to Coach and Why You Would Never Want to Be a Teacher.
Right.
I have an amazing editor. And by the way, a lot of people hire ghostwriters. And if you're not familiar with book writing, Barry, a ghostwriter basically sits there with a tape deck or records you and
Yeah.
takes what you have and then makes a manuscript. And there's very little interaction with the writing part where somebody else writes it and then you read it and look it over and then you discuss.
Yeah.
I wrote this entire book and I hired editors who've written and been published before in the education space. And I'm working with a PhD and he's been amazing. He's fixing
Yeah.
my grammar errors, but it's been one of those things because my dad is a PhD in education and he believes that there are teachers. There's no such thing as a coach in the educational field. And I said to my dad, by the end of this book, I will convince you that you are not a teacher, you're a coach. There are
Right.
teachers, but you, Dad, you're a coach. So we're getting there. And this book, I think, is going to be great for musicians, for teachers of anybody. If you teach social studies or if you teach how to play cello, this is a book
Yeah.
that you're going to need to read to make you a better coach and just not even a teacher. You won't even associate yourself. Rob Spampanato over in he's a Jersey music school owner too. Rob's Music Lessons, and he said to me, he was at the NAM show. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with the NAM show.
I'm
He said
very
to me,
familiar with
Mike,
the NAM show.
yeah, I presented the card courts at the NAM show. He said to
Class.
me, Mike, I don't even have teachers anymore. I call them all coaches. And I was like,
Very
really? He
good.
goes, yeah, man. You basically, the way you presented it made me realize that, yeah, maybe I do have coaches and not teachers. And I think that's going to be my next career thing is going to be, and my goal is to be on a TEDx talk. And I want to be promoting this book and I want to change the way education is looked at in the music world, in the educational world, in the public school system. I came from both. I think I have a really
Yeah.
good understanding. And I think the next time you talk to me, I'm going to have a book that I'm going to ask you to maybe we can promote on your podcast, Barry.
Absolutely. I can't wait to read it already. Yeah. That's when's it due for it to come out, or have you thought that far ahead yet?
Oh, I always put deadlines. This book should be done by the end of the year and should be ready for sale. So I'm hoping that it's going to be done. I have to get some hard copies made, and I'm going to probably put it on Amazon. So that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a stretch, but I'm hoping by the end of this year, by either January 1st or December 31st, it'll be completed and up on Amazon.
Cool. So that's the end of 2023, lads. So if you're
Yep.
listening back in a couple of years' time, that should be available, or that will be available on Amazon. Go and
That's
get
right.
that into you.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, amazing stuff. I literally, my head is absolutely spinning with all the stuff that we've just spoken about. Like I said, what are you working on now? And then you just say you want to be on a TED talk. Ted, if you're listening, give Mike a shout. Come on now. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah, amazing stuff. I wish you all the very best with it. Before we finish up, we're going to jump into a quick fire round of just some fun questions just for the crack, because why
Yeah,
not?
great.
So, right, here's one for you. What's the funniest joke that you know?
Oh, I just heard it one the other day, and I thought it was the funniest joke. Ready?
Go on.
How does a musician make $1 million?
Don't know.
You start them off with 10 million.
Very good. Very, very good. That's
Come
so
on,
true.
that's great. That's a
And,
great joke.
it's like, it's so true. It's absolutely spot on. It hurts how true that is. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, good stuff. Let's see, what else have we got here? If you could live in any era in time, which one would you choose? Now, bearing in mind that
It
you've
would.
just sat there and told me all about the 80s and stuff, so I don't really know how you could want to live in any other era. But for the sake of the exercise,
The only time I would say, the only era I would say I would live in, I would have loved to have been at the 1973 concert. The song remains the same, at Madison Square Garden, watching Led Zeppelin. That's what I. So just put me back. If I can go into time, just back in time for 1 4 hour time, it would be
yeah,
that.
you've thought about that before. You were
Yes.
ready for this.
Yes.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'd go back and I'd probably be in the audience for Right Here, Right Now. One of the Van Halen ones. I don't know when
I
exactly
was
it is.
there. I saw that. I saw that tour.
Ah, no way.
Oh, my son's first concert was watching Van Halen back. And by the way, this was a great Van Halen story. I saw Van Halen when they first came back with David Lee Roth, and Wolfgang was the bass player.
Ah,
He was like
yeah,
16, Madison Square Garden. And I remember vividly, they played two songs and then the lights came on. And I almost cry every time I talk about this. The lights come on, I think, after You Really Got Me. And
yeah,
there is a standing ovation because this is the first time Van Halen comes back, but not with Michael Anthony, but with
yeah,
Wolfgang. Eddie walks
yeah,
over, puts his arm around his son, kisses his cheek, and looks at the
yeah,
audience. And for like 5 minutes, it's just an eruption of an
yeah,
applause. Like this dad gave his son one of the most greatest gifts in the
yeah,
entire world.
yeah.
Oof,
And hey,
oof.
listen, Wolfgang Van Halen. I don't know if you saw the Taylor Hawkins tribute
Yes,
concert.
yes, yes.
Fucking hell. Like I just
Holy
it's one of
shit.
those things. I've never ever heard two guitar players sound so alike. Do you know what I
Identical.
mean?
Yeah,
like it was
yeah.
it gave me goosebumps. I watched that back. Like On Fire is one of my favorite Van Halen songs. And Wolfgang done that unbelievably. Hot for Teacher. Like Hot for Teacher.
Half a teacher's note for note. Yeah,
No, like
perfect.
not even note for note. It's like if music had syllables.
Yes,
Fucking
exactly.
oh,
It's like pronouncing
I
Grande.
exactly. There you go. I'm like the biggest Van Halen fan. That's my phone. I've got like all of the plectrums here. I've got the Frankenstrat right there. Like I've got the old PV 5150. That's my
Wow.
amp, and like I'm the biggest Van Halen fan in the world. My mouse mat, which I won't pick up because it'll just upset everything, is Van
That's
Halen.
amazing.
Uh, it's yeah. I've got a little Funko Pop. I've even got a face mask from COVID of Van Halen. So yeah, I'm a big
Wow.
Van Halen nerd. So
I
yeah, I can
love
sit here
Van
and talk.
Halen.
I can sit here and
Me
talk
too.
about it all day, but yeah, right. Before we do that, one last question, and this is the one that I've been asking everybody. I've been having so much fun with this over the past little while. If you could fight one celebrity, who would it be? What celebrity would you most like to fight?
I got to tell you, I hate fighting. That's why I don't watch hockey. I don't think I'd fight anybody. I'd probably hug them and say, "How can I help you?" That's what
Oh,
so I don't. I'm not a fighting guy, and I wish I could give you a better answer.
oh no, that is that really is the best answer that you could have given me because you've just sort of like made me out to be a bit of a Neanderthal, being like, oh, but it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. No, fair play to you. Fair play to you. Mike Grande, if people are looking for you in any capacity, where can they find you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Hit me up, rockoutloud@gmail.com. I mean, I'm pretty responsive. You can hit me up on social media, but rockoutloud@gmail. If you want a direct line to me, connect to me on email. My phone number is right there on the signature. Give me a
Yeah,
call. I mean, if there's anything I can do to help you, because people get into predicaments where they struggle and they think they're all alone. There's a good chance that I probably walked that path sometime in my career. I would be happy to offer any expertise. And somebody just reached out to me today. It was on Facebook Messenger. I won't mention it to them, but they're struggling and they're not making it. And told them I have Tony Robbins coaches. I've been using Tony Robbins coaches for over a decade, and I believe
yeah,
everybody needs a coach. And I have a platinum coach. This one coach, his name is, oh my gosh, he's my big. I just call him Coach. So,
yeah,
and I guess I could probably put his name in the show notes. His name is Andrew Devlin. He said to me,
yeah.
"If you want what you haven't gotten, you have to do what you haven't done." And I just
There
told
you
this
go.
to that person, and he's like, "Wow, that just opened up like a whole different world for me, a whole different dimension. So if you want what you haven't got, do what you're not doing. And that's so true with anything. If it's a relationship, if you want more love from your wife, do what you're not doing. If you want more students in your business, do what you're not doing. If you're not advertising, if you're not marketing, so there's always an answer, but I'm always there to help. So call me up if you want to give me a call. If you're in the States, if you want to email me, I'll get back to you just as well.
There you go. Mike Grande, all around nice guy. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Barry. I really appreciate you.